Hello and welcome to the Scoutcast ahead of Game Week 6 and following another punishing week for many of us. My name is Joe.
My name's David.
And my name is Karam.
Welcome everyone to David, who is returning from an injury layoff. Hope you stay fit for the rest of the Scoutcast. And Karam, who has appeared on the Breakfast Club show but is making his Scoutcast debut. David, what's coming up on tonight's show?
Well, yeah, hopefully I managed to last it beyond the 59th minute because we do want to make sure that everybody gets those additional points. I know that Karam has kept faith in me through my injury scare. So thank you for that. But yeah, in terms of what we're actually going to discuss, yeah, loads to talk about. Particularly that Man City result of the weekend, particularly surprising for a lot of people. So we're going to look at Man City and dissect away and find out what's wrong there. Does that change how we approach having their players? I mean, a lot of people questioning the defence now. We are going to be talking about my wildcard, hopefully not in too much detail because I have no idea what I'm doing at this point in time. We are then going to talk about, or actually I think first going to be talking about, after we've gone through Game Week 5 stuff, we're going to talk about defenders because it's happened again every year. We all want to go big at the back and then it never lasts. And I think we've finally all reached that stage where we're looking at our premium defenders and thinking they're not really cutting the mustard. So we need some cheaper ones. And because there aren't really that many cheap options out there, we're having to dig really deep to find out who they are. And Joe's going to help us out with that one. And then our talking point this week, a lot of us can relate to this, me especially. It's not been a great start for a lot of us. A bit disappointing. Surprise results, that Man City one, of course, being one of them. Things not really going our way. So we're going to talk about how do we recover from that? How do we make sure that we don't maybe knee-jerk too much? How do we make sure that we do just enough to not kind of sit around and do nothing and hope it all gets better? What's the best approach when you've had a bad start is, I think, a great talking point at this stage in the season because we've got some data to look at as well. So, yeah, big things to talk about tonight and, of course, differentials and clean sheets. We will be doing as per usual.
Yes, well, let's set the scene on how to climb the rankings by just very briefly, hopefully, talking about Game Week 5. Red Arrows all round again. David, you are top of the tree with a fantastic below average 47. That's the best out of all of us. So anyway, David, tell us about your week. 19 on the bench, but dead ending for a wild card. Is that right?
You know what? I hadn't actually bothered to. I didn't want to know how much was on the bench. I knew there was a lot. But I didn't want to look. I was like, I don't want to know the figure.
Don't count.
And you just told me, Joe. Set me off. No, it was an annoying game week. But I think a lot of people have an annoying game week. I can't believe I'm top of these three. I think I've continued a streak where whenever I'm on the Scoutcast, I'm never the guy at the bottom. I don't know how I've managed that. I mean, it must just be luck. Because it was a rubbish game week.
We're all awful, perhaps. It's probably the answer.
Well, maybe. It's not that I'm top every week. I'm just never bottom, which I'll take. Mediocrity, mid-table. I'm like the West Ham. I'll take that. So look, those of you on the Breakfast Club know I made a late switch on my captaincy, which actually paid off because I was going to go Sterling and I went Aguero, and that was about the only thing that went particularly well. I started Pukki. I know a lot of people benched him. I was kind of hedging my bets because I benched Cantwell. And I don't know why I did that, but in hindsight, because if I think that Pukki might do all right. Then surely Cantwell might do as well, and I probably should have started him. In the end, it cost me, I think, 5 points because it was him versus Zinchenko. So I was so hedging. I was starting Zinchenko and Pukki, but benching Cantwell. It looks very kind of uncertain of itself, which is maybe why I got punished. In terms of like the moves I made, I brought in Aguero for Kane, which obviously was the right move because I think I earned. Well, I wouldn't have captained Kane, so I probably earned maybe sort of like 7 points out of that. Just came just ahead of it. I just didn't think Spurs would do that well against Palace. And it turns out they did, but Kane still did rubbish. So I guess that was a good idea. But I also got Norwood in. And it's so frustrating because I've been stung again by VAR. I've been calling for VAR for years. And the way that it went off at the World Cup I thought was great. And then it comes to the Premier League and it just won't stop sticking the knife in my team because I had Den Donker get one chalked off. I had another one a couple of weeks ago. And then Sheffield United scored against Southampton. It was a McBurney goal. It would have been a Norwood assist, and it got chalked off for someone who didn't even touch the ball being offside. It's just relentless at this point.
Yeah, I also had the Den Donker, VAR decision.
Yeah, a lot
as
of us
well.
had Den Donker.
I didn't know what to think of it. I didn't even get excited. I didn't have enough time to get excited by him scoring because they just said, "Nah, it's not a goal now."
Well, I did the worst thing, which was the second it went in, I just straight went on Twitter like, yes, because he was coming off the bench, and then immediately had to retract. It was just so embarrassing.
Every time I
learned my lesson.
every time I feel a bit like getting a bit braggy about a goal, I have to like rein it in, which is a good thing anyway. But I have to rein it in because I think, is it a goal? I don't know. I'm just going to leave it like 10 minutes while they decide.
Oh yeah. You have to wait. You have to wait. And I did wait with Norwood, but it's just but I mean, I didn't wait long enough because I was covering the game in my study and I'd seen the goal had come in, so I was kind of, as you do when you're on your own following your FPL team, I was scenes by myself.
Okay,
so yeah, that was embarrassing.
So your team has been dead ended. You're going for a new team, so we're going to come to that. We'll come to that at the end.
I'm glad that it went badly though. I am glad that it went badly because it just meant it kind of solidified my resolve to wildcard. So yeah.
Well, maybe your wildcard will be better than mine. Here's my team. I'm second with 45. Just wildcarded this fantastic crew in. So basically, a lot of the players I kept, I only kept about 3 or 4 players, and they all did really well. So Pukki, Mount, and Salah. So glad I kept them. The new recruits, KDB, apparently not so good that week. TAA. Luca Dean as well. So I'm reeling off these names. I'm not disappointed in KDB or Alexander Arnold. It's frustrating, obviously, but they're not bad players. So I'm not disappointed by them as long-term picks. But Otamendi, not quite sure. Perhaps we're going to talk about defenders and particularly
Pep's not quite sure at this point.
Yeah, we'll talk about Man City as well a bit later as well. So I won't dwell on that. So I could be in the market for a cheaper option. So more on that later. Because handily we take a look at them later. Karam, you are nice Scoutcast welcome for you. You're bottom of the 3, but luckily myself and David have had quite bad scores ourselves. So Karam 33, and I guess the story of your week, Pukki benched.
Yeah, definitely. So when you have 5 of your premium assets don't do well, then definitely your week is over. The only shot on target from Newcastle ended up in a goal, so that's a double clean sheet lost. The shocking result for Man City and the last minute switch from Salah to Sterling captaincy costed a lot. The decision of benching Pukki was sort of like, I thought, educated risk. I had 2 spots to start between Lundstram, Deulofeu and Pukki. And I sort of made an early decision to start Lundstrom in anyway. So it was really between Deulofeu and Pukki. And I thought Deulofeu has more chances to score or the return against the Arsenal defense more than Pukki to score against Man City. But at the end of the day, it was just a 5 points difference between Deulofeu and Pukki. So while it sounded horrible to bench Pukki, in fact, it's only 5 points difference. So it's not the end of the world. If I look at the positives from having this score, it's funny that now my game week rank is 6.3 million. So at least I'm still better than 500,000 in the world. But positives, there are very, very good positives. I mean, I still have 6 players from Man City and Liverpool who didn't do well this week, but surely they will do next week. I've got 2 free transfers to sort out a few options like Miguel, Deulofeu. We'll speak about the transfers at the end, but I've made one of the 2 for now. And the wild card is still here. So I know many managers have used the wild card and are using it this week. But I am sticking with the plan to, like we mentioned a few weeks ago in the Breakfast Club Game Week 3, that I'm aiming to wildcard in Game Week 9, and I don't see the urgency to wildcard now based on the result of Game Week 5. So we move on.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your team as well, I mean, it's funny you should say look on the positive side of it, because that's what we do on the Scoutcast. When we had a bad week, we justify it by pretending everything's positive. But in your case, it is positive there, because looking at your team, you're a couple of moves out of quite a good score this week. So if you'd have captained Salah, so he was your vice captain, so clearly in your thoughts, and if you'd have played Pukki as well instead of, say, Lundstram, then you're looking at a slightly more respectable score and in a good position this week, certainly better than 33. So yeah, I mean that's not even spinning it. I think there's a bunch, as you say, you got 6 between Liverpool and Man City. Now I challenge people to tell me they've suddenly become a bad side, but nevertheless, something we will discuss later. I just want to talk about, we got a rough with the smooth section as well, so I'll put a couple of these out as well. Won't dwell on it too long. Smooth, well done, Brandon Walsh. He got Pookie off the bench though, because he had the foresight to play Montoya from Brighton, who luckily got tonsillitis. Well, not lucky for him, but luckily for Brandon Walsh, he had tonsillitis. But I've had tonsillitis. That's actually not lucky for Montoya. Roughs. There's a lot of roughs. So Andy Penman, he went 5 at the back with Lundstram over the bench Pookie. So similar as yourself there. And he got Loughton in for Robertson as his transfer. So mixed reaction really to he's ditched big in the back in terms of financial matters, but he's in personnel. So it's a question really of, I suppose, a focus on quantity of defenders, not quality perhaps there. But who knows? Loughton, I think, looking at Burnley's fixtures, I don't think that's not a bad move, but time will tell. FPL Cougars sold Mount and Wilson. That's 22 points for KDB and Greenwood, who got 1 point.
Oh.
And he dropped 800,000 places. Now, FPL Cougars dropped that place. So, lots of people had huge drops this week, and they were moving out those players with the good scores there. FPL Green Arrow wildcarded out Gilbert, Mount, Salah, Pookie and Kane. All of them returned, and he brought in TAA and KDB, Thebeo from Arsenal, Haller and Barnes all blanked, and he benched Campbell for good measure as well. When it gets bad, it just rains on you with just pure drops of badness.
That sounds so horrible.
Yeah,
I'd quit if that happened to me.
Well, that's happened to me. I'm still going. It just happens. So FPL Green Arrow should take comfort in that. Just carry on. Richard McTiernan, Adam P, among others, they all got less than 30 points off their wildcarded team. As my wildcard team showed, it was actually a bad week to wildcard. But we're hoping that it's going to be a good rest of the month in October to have wildcarded then. Who knows? Let's move on to the community questions. Lots of questions about defenders. Cheap defenders. Finally, the big at the back penny seems to have dropped. Something we've been discussing. I know David and myself were discussing with Az. We're trying to drum it into his head not to spend too much in certain areas.
Don't bring that up again.
Something we've been discussing a lot. So I'm not going to say we've been proved right. We've been proved right. And there is a lot of questions on defenders, and in particular cheap ones as well. So Pep Talk says, with so many expensive attacking players scoring so well, is it worth spending heavily on defence or go cheap as possible? Who are the best budget defenders? Rishi Segal says, is it time to go old school? One premium defender, a bunch of cheapies, and the rest spent on attackers. And Stoic and many others also asked us about our favoured defenders from Game Week 6. Karam, what do you think about defenders? You've obviously spent big at the back, so-called. You have quantity and quality there. What's your plan with defenders? And crucially, is it worth recommending any cheap defenders? And if so, who?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, Joe, for me, when I started the season, I started with 4 at the back for premium: Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, Edenia, and Zinchenko. And until the end of the first international break, so Game Week 4, I was still a big believer of the theory of big at the back. But after what I've seen in Game Week 5, I must admit that now I'm considering to move more funds to midfield or forwards, because we've seen many options are doing so well. Now in my case, I cannot move, for example, now with the money in the bank, I have like 0.2 or 0.3. I can't move from Miguel or Deulofeu to other brackets, for example, without taking out some funds from the defense. So for me, I'm looking at Virgil van Dijk to sell, unfortunately, as part of funding or taking out more funds to fund other options in midfield. Now, in generally, I feel like 4 at the back became a bit too much at this stage of the season. I thought that having 2 or 3 data set points of game weeks would not be enough, but now we have 5, which is still out of 38 game weeks is still not a big sample. But for now, I can consider selling one of the 4 big options that I have. But for me, however, I still see a lot of value in some of the premium players, and it would be very risky to sell them even at this moment of time. The first one, for example, is Trent Alexander-Arnold. So he ranks 21st for 2-point scorer in the game, and he's second amongst the defenders in a season where we now see forwards and midfielders are doing so well so far. He's created 21 chances, 9 more than the second place, Lucas Digne, which I will mention in a second. More than Kevin De Bruyne, who created 19, of course, with some limited minutes, and Lanzini 15. Even Deulofeu, who has the most chance created with 12, more than any other forward, he's still far away from TAA. And he has 24 points, so he effectively averaged 4.8 points per game, and that's decent for a 7 million defender asset. Lucas Digne, another option I'm willing to keep for now. He has the good fixtures moving forward until game week 13. He created 12 chances. So I still, and I learned from last season that Lucas Digne, you cannot mess up with him. You will take the 17 points from him in a game week, but you will take the -1 on the way. So I will leave him. I will leave him there for now.
Because I know you were telling, because we were talking about Lucas Digne during the week before this, and you were saying he's averaging something like 4 or 5 points a match, isn't he?
Yeah.
But as you say, it doesn't come nice and smoothly, as in 5 points a week. It comes 12 points, then 1 point, or no points. Just like
exactly. Lucas Digne averaged 4.5 points per game in a shape of 11, 6, 5, 1, and 0. So that's how Lucas Digne will deliver for you. So I'm keeping him for now. The other thing, the other defender I will mention is a Man City defense in general. We'll talk about in a separate topic. But at 5.4 now, you can get Otamendi, who's now the only nailed-on center-back after we hear the injury of John Stones. And at this price, to be honest, I don't see many other options for defenders around the 5 million bracket, in arguably a better team and one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
So for me, when I look at 5.5 million defender like Otamendi, I look at the price bracket and where this value or where this money what can this money do for me in midfield and forward? Almost no one in forward is a good option at 5.5. And in midfield, Ceballos, Miguel, you will get an assist every 3-4 game weeks, as I could see for now. So if you want to downgrade Otamendi to likes of Miguel or Soyuncu, who are good options at 4.5, if you still want to downgrade, that million will take you from like Miguel to Tielemans or James, who doesn't have the best fixtures moving forward. The next 4 are not the best for Man United, in my opinion. So you will not find too many options at that price bracket. And I still have some faith in Man City defense. We'll talk more about the defense in that section. So
because we've been thrown a bone of Lundstram this season, as we were with Wan-Bissaka last season. So we can go cheap there. We know he's going to play, and we know that you're going to get the odd chance of attacking returns. That's not bad for 4 million, which is what many paid for him. But you've got those 4 premium defenders, or near enough with Zinchenko. But so are you thinking of going just 3, or can I tempt you to go down into 2 premium defenders?
Well, for now, I'm considering to go down to 3, from 4 to 3. Okay. And the last 2 spots will be Lundstram. He's going nowhere for now. At 4 million, you cannot replace him, basically. You can go down to Mainz. I like him. I like his attribute in defense where he blocks the shots, so he's a bonus magnet should Aston Villa keep a clean sheet. I like Soyuncu, but not now. After game week 8, Leicester have very good fixtures moving forward until game week 14 or 15, I believe. So Soyuncu could be a very nice option at 4.5. Rico from Bournemouth. I know Bournemouth doesn't have the best defense, but Rico started the last game, came out with an assist. He's a left back or left winger at some point, so I like him at 4 million. Could be 4.1 soon. So he's a good option if you'd like to rotate 4 million defender alongside a 3 in a 4-4-2 or 4-5-1. But certainly these 2.5 million from Van Dijk to Rico can go a long way from Miguel to any 7 million midfielder, or in my case, De La Feu up to Jamie Vardy. That sort of a bracket.
Good,
so I like the idea.
And also, you mentioned with like a 7 million midfielder, so that could be like a Maddison or a Tielemans when Leicester, as you mentioned, Barnsley, game week 9 is when Leicester's fixtures turn. It's already, I like the idea of that, thinking ahead a little bit there. It's like, maybe not now, but gives the option there. I must admit, I think well, we'll come to what I think in a second. But David, what do you think about defenders? Firstly, sort of, how many premium defenders should we have? And can you recommend, in particular, any cheap ones?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't really want any defenders right now. If I could use all those slots of midfielders and forwards, I'd happily do it because there's so few defensive options, either in the premium or the cheap ones, that I'm particularly excited about. In terms of how many premium, because it's good that you've got myself and Karam on this, because Karam's looking at it from a position of I don't want to use my wild card. I need to try and get from 1 week to the next over a certain period. Whereas I have a wild card, so I can kind of, some of the decisions that he's sort of made there, I have a little bit more freedom to say, well, do you know what? I don't want this, or maybe I do want that. So on the subject of the sort of like Liverpool defence, for me, I'm not going to have a double up. I mean, we sort of covered that in recent weeks as to why. But to be honest, it's really tough because I don't like Liverpool's defence and I don't like their fixtures either. Chelsea away, Sheffield United away, Leicester at home, Man United away, Tottenham at home, Villa away. But I do like what Alexander-Arnold's offered as an individual asset. If we look at what he's done over the last 4 game weeks, he's top for chances created out of defenders with 18, which is 7 more than anyone else. Second place is Edenia on 11. So with Alexander-Arnold, I wouldn't want to downgrade him to Van Dijk because I don't like the defence. But at the same time, if I don't like the defence, is Alexander-Arnold worth paying 7.1 million? It's a tough question to answer when you're on a wildcard because you have the freedom to completely spread that money elsewhere into midfield and forward. But at the same time, it's Liverpool defence. Surely they're going to keep some clean sheets in there, like away at Sheffield United in game week 7. I'm sure they will. So, it's a really tough one. Digne is another one where, again, I totally get what you're saying about, you just take it as it comes. If he's going to give you 17 and then -1, that's just the way it goes. But, I really haven't been impressed with Everton's defence. And while he is offering, so I just mentioned there, 11 chances created, that's second of any defender in the last 4 game weeks. If I am finding myself short in midfield and forward positions, he is going to be someone I'm going to be willing to downgrade from because I just don't think it's worth paying 6 million in my score because I had him from the start of the season to be into a team that I don't really trust the defence of. Because at the end of the day, I kind of, if I'm going to pay for a premium, I want the possibility of both clean sheets and the attacking returns. So I think that I could have a situation where I'm only going to have Trent Alexander-Arnold and then 4 cheapies as my other defenders. But then here comes the other problem is, who are those cheapies going to be? Because, there's just the options are rubbish. So when you look at teams with decent defensive potential over the next 6 game weeks on the season ticker, top 6 teams, Man City, obviously you're not going to get anyone cheap there. Although, of course, potentially Eric Garcia could come into the game.
4.5, please.
Yeah, that would be great. If we get a 4.5 million Man City defender, I would certainly consider it. But I feel like they won't give us him at 4.5.
To be honest, they should all be valued at 4.5 on current form.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Second is Burnley. So, I think I probably am going to have a Burnley defender. Although, of course, I have Pope as well. But I'm not averse to a double-up. I'm happy to have a double-up. And you've already mentioned Loughton there, who's a potentially decent option. Yeah, maybe. Maybe, but I think I'd rather have one of the fullbacks. Annoyingly, Burnley fullbacks, they're sort of they are like old fullbacks. They aren't really they're not like Robertson and Alexander-Arnold. They just strictly defend. So you don't really get that much more by getting a fullback from Burnley, but it's just at the moment they're the cheaper ones. And Burnley over the last 4 game weeks, as we were talking about on the captain video earlier, 5 big chances conceded in the last 4, which is the joint second best in the league. So I think, with those fixtures and with that potential they've shown over the last couple of game weeks, I think you could be fairly confident starting your Burnley defender. Mm-hmm. Perhaps maybe not at home to Norwich, but away at Villa, home to Everton, away at Leicester, and then they got away at Sheffield United in game week 11. They're teams that I have seen struggle to score goals on various occasions so far this year. So actually a double up on Pope and another one of those defenders could come in. But then some of these other teams in the top 6, Arsenal, no way am I getting an Arsenal defender. I mean, that's just a cardinal sin in FPL. Norwich, kind of the same. Chelsea, obviously, it's going to be hard to get cheapo there. Of course, they've got Tomori, who actually scored, I think, against Wolves. So perhaps maybe an option there. But Chelsea don't really look like a team that are going to keep clean sheets. So then the only other team that I think we could potentially get a cheap option from, might be worth having, is West Ham, who I 2 clean sheets in a row, and of course they kept a clean sheet against Norwich, which is not, shouldn't be scoffed at. They kept a clean sheet against Aston Villa, and they spent most of the second half down to 10 men. So again, that shouldn't be something that we kind of laugh off. And yes, they got Man United at home next, so not too sure of a clean sheet there. Bournemouth away the week after that, again, not too sure. But game week 8, Crystal Palace at home, Everton away game week 9, Sheffield United at home game week 10, Newcastle at home game week 11. So perhaps one of the options there, like maybe Ogbonna or Diop, because they seem to be the ones that are playing most games. It looks like Balbuena's not really in the first team anymore. Fullbacks are kind of harder to call, although, of course, Masuaku suspended now. Right back, I think, is Fredericks, but you never really know when Zabaletta's going to come in. So you probably want a centre-back there, and I'm not paying the extra money for Fabianski. So, but again, I'm not going to start a West Ham defender for game week 6 or 7. So what my defence looks like for the next 2 game weeks, I'm not really sure. I mean, to be honest, maybe Karam, you've got the right idea here of wildcard in game week 8 or 9, because that's when some of these teams with cheaper defenders actually start getting nicer fixtures. So yeah, it's really tricky, and I hate to say it, I know I'm on the Scoutcast, but I'm really uncertain as to what my defence is going to look like, because I just feel that there's so few options that are worth having, and maybe that's why we spend not much money, because actually there's a lot of really nice options in the mid-price bracket, in midfield and forward. So maybe that's the bottom line.
Can I add something? Now, David, if you decide to go with the trend and the rest are cheap defenders, and in game week 8, let's say the game hasn't changed back to what we thought at the beginning of the season, and we had to go back big at the back. So that would make your life a bit hard to fund the back again and go to the likes of double Liverpool again if when they finish the tough fixtures, if we can call it this way, until game week 12, or look at Dini if he delivered again. Would that make your decisions harder to fund the back line again? Because then you are in a situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I mean, yeah, we always like to talk about flexibility, don't we? I mean, yeah, that could be a consideration, but I suppose I'd like to hope that I'd leave myself in a situation in midfield and forward that I would never be too far away from being able to switch a McGinn or a Daniel James or a Mount or one of those options back into Edenia or a Wan-Bissaka or Otamendi or something like that. It'd be annoying, but I mean, generally speaking, I like to try and save transfers as often as I can for kind of that reason. If you're worried about the structure of your team, you can sometimes get around that by banking free transfers nice and early, because then it gives you the freedom to do a bit of surgery without having to take the hit. So it's a good point. We should definitely consider that whenever we're wildcarding and changing structure, always making sure you have a nice extra strategy. Those who watch the Breakfast Club on Saturday will have seen Simon, his team looked so, like, it was almost too balanced. It was really nice. I don't actually know how well it got on, but that's irrelevant. It was a team that gives him the flexibility to do whatever he wants in the subsequent game week. So that's always worth considering.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been keen on that, particularly with defenders. I've often liked the balance. I really like this so-called big at the back theory as well. It's just because I see the team, 11 guys you play, and you've got your bench as well, and use it. So I look for multiple points routes really, and I can currently only think of 2 for defenders. So how I'm quite certain about how I'd like my defence to look, and it's very similar to how I've got now, but I've just wildcarded, so that would explain it. But I think 2 of TAA, possibly Robertson and Luca Dean, because we've got the figures up for attacking defenders as well. Alexander Arnold is in a class of his own. Luca Dean is quite near it, and we know what he can achieve as well. And I think the rest is for cheap ones, and I think there are some good options there. Lots of people are asking them, so I think that could be fleshed out really well with 3 cheap players. Lundstram, I mentioned, is a gift. Sionyu, 4.5 or 4.6 is he now at Leicester. Look at their fixtures coming up. They look great soon. And I also like now, David mentioned Burnley. I like Claret in general for a third third defender. Burnley, West Ham or Villa. I've got Otamendi as that role at the moment, and I think I can go down about $1 million to one of those guys. I think all of them, as we saw with Villa and as we've seen with West Ham in the last 2 games, and we've seen how Burnley are, particularly at home, and they've got good fixtures coming up. I think they are good options to bring in when you perhaps got an injury. I'm hearing that Mason Mount, for example, may be injured or is definitely injured in tonight's...
Come off after 15 minutes.
In tonight's Chelsea game. So, therefore, it's good to bring on a player like that because he saves you that transfer that week just in case he's only out for a week or so. So, for me, I've got TAA and Luca Dean, Lundstram, Sionyu, Otamendi as possibly making way for one of these for a Claret. We've got those stats up there. You can see the attacking. So Alexander-Arnold, 21 chances created. Luca Dean, 12 chances created. Corners as well. So Alexander-Arnold has taken 18. Luca Dean has 17. So they're just involved as well. I really like that as well. Alexander-Arnold, 7 goal attempts. 5 of those in the box. 8 goal attempts for Luca Dean. Not quite so many in the box there, and only 1 on target. So it shows, a defender trying to shoot at a goal. But nevertheless, lots of attacking positions there. Now, I'm reminded of a Meet the Manager video we did recently with Josh from the Always Cheating podcast. And it was something he was saying very much that spend a lot on fullbacks from premium sides and go cheap with centre-backs with cheap sides, with the mid-table sides and those that are kind of battling relegation. And I like that. I've always liked that mentality, and I like to do it a bit more. So I think a bit of tweaking for me. So looking at the best defenders in terms of minutes per baseline bonus, Johnny Evans is there at the top. Now, I'm not going to recommend getting Johnny Evans in because he's a troublesome individual at times as an FPL asset. But he's troublesome this year because he's 5 million. Sionyu is there. He's doing very well for minutes per baseline bonus at 4.6. Great value. I still think Dunk at Brighton. Mings at Villa, I think, is another good option there. Engels at Villa as well. He's doing very well for baseline bonus. And baseline bonus, by the way, is strip away all of the other stuff like clean sheets and goals and assists, and you're just left with their basically jobbing stuff they do, passing, tackling, creating chances, all those types of things. So that proves that they're doing other things that the bonus system likes as well. Now, I'm going to Lascelles at Newcastle as well. I don't think is a bad option. Loughton at Burnley and Peters at Burnley. Now, Neil was on last week talking about Tarkowski, and I was saying that I prefer Peters because he's cheaper. Anyway, the same principle though, and something, David, you were thinking about as well. Just before we move on to Man City, Karam, regarding cheap defenders, are there any other names out there you'd like to mention? Because it sounds like obviously you're thinking of moving a bit of money out of defence.
Yeah, definitely. So Yonko, like you mentioned, guys, is on top of the list. Probably I will bench him next game week if I do the transfer and then play him against Newcastle. I like the home fixture, and then Leicester has very good fixtures from game week 9 onward. Rico is another pick if I want to really go down to 4.0 and rotate in a 3-5-2 or 4-4-2. Then Rico from Bournemouth could be a very good option at 4.0. You don't have to start him every week in, week out. So he could be an option. I like the Burnley pick as well. They have very good fixtures as well. There are a couple of players or a couple of teams, actually. They're a bit more expensive, but they might worth a shot. Tottenham, they have 4 good fixtures. Probably not the best against Leicester. Used to be festive games or nil-nil. You never know. But I like the Southampton, Brighton, Watford. And then in game week 10, you can switch and give another go to Man United from game week 10. Yes, they have Norwich away. Well, we all love Pookie, so could be. We don't expect a lot of a clean sheet. But look at this: Bournemouth, Brighton, Sheffield, Aston Villa until game week 15. So if you want to stick around the 5.5 bracket and you don't like Man City defense, then Tottenham followed by Man United, could be a good cover between now and game week 15. So that's sort of like thinking outside of the box.
I think it is.
If someone fancy it.
And I think we saw with Manchester United at the weekend with their clean sheet, and everyone was going, "Oh, what? Manchester United keep a clean sheet?" Well, it's going to happen. And Wan-Bissaka, if they do, I do like him in terms of what he can offer for other routes to bonus points, and particularly in the Sky game as well, but in FPL as well. I think they're good calls. Let's move on to Man City. Karam, I understand we have some questions from the community about Man City, who incidentally you are a fan of and are wearing the Man City away kit.
Yes, definitely. So this kit I got from my colleagues at work for winning the mini league last season. So Man City is the hot topic for this week.
Yeah.
After the shocking defeat against Norwich, there are some questions on the defense as well as the attack. So Tom has a question. Was Man City performance against Norwich a blip, or does it show that we cannot trust their players with the captaincy? What of their defense without Laporte? Richard Brock has another question. Can we rely on Sterling for the armband, or is it time to look elsewhere? Who else should we captain? SD Souza, Salah and Sterling were template essentials in game week 1. Not so anymore, but they are still top captaincy candidates until now. Is Aguero better than Sterling? So I'll go back to you, Joe.
Okay.
Give us your thought on Man City.
Yeah, well, basically, I spoke earlier today with David about some Man City assets for the captaincy. So we were talking about largely Sterling and Aguero for the captaincy. So I do urge people to have a look at that. That's got mine and David's thoughts on those particular assets there. But essentially, in all matches, Sterling and Aguero are absolutely top or near to the top for everything you would want. So shots in the box, those types of things. But look at the last 2 weeks and Sterling's down. Aguero's maintaining that great form, but Sterling is down. So the question we have to ask ourselves as Sterling owners, if we do indeed own him, is that a blip? Those 2 weeks, is that the start of a worrying trend? Or is he going to come back with a home game at Watford, fire in about 3 goals and 3 assists and just get one of those mega scores that we've seen over the years as well, or recent years, and that's my thoughts really, because a lot hinges on those Man City assets. For me at the moment, I preach patience, so I'm being patient with Sterling until I can take it no more. And at the moment, I think 2 matches where Sterling has been overshadowed by his colleagues, I will look elsewhere. And in terms of defence, I've already mentioned about Otamendi. Yes, he is the only fit centre-back they've got, but I think I might be able to get a similar performing asset for about $1 million cheaper and then use that $1 million elsewhere. But like you were talking about earlier, Karam, where do we use that extra money in attack at the moment? And I'm not quite sure. I could do with an extra 5 million, but I'm not sure that 1 million is going to go too far. We can all do with 5 million, but none of us want 1 million. That's just small change, isn't it? Back to you, Karen. There's my thoughts there. I'm sticking with Sterling. I've got my eye on Aguero. KDB, I'm not even going to mention him. He's good, and I don't care about that 1 point. I mean, not turning up. Norwich, he's fantastic. He's staying in my team.
I love the spirit. David, I'll go back to you now. What are your thoughts on Man City? You're on a wild card. So who is in your wildcard team from the midfield? Aguero is in, Zinchenko or Otamendi?
Yeah, so I think I was more worried about Sterling from the eye test than I was about the data from the Norwich game. Because obviously Joe's touched there on the fact that, over the last 2 game weeks, Sterling is down from compared to what he was doing in the first 3 game weeks of the season. Aguero's obviously maintained that level. But the data from the Norwich game actually wasn't too bad. And I think the reason why over the last 2 game weeks he looks so bad is because it was the Brighton game that he was arguably much worse in, where he didn't have a shot at all. I don't exactly know how many chances he created but he was very peripheral in that game. And he appeared, there were times in that Norwich game where he was probably a bit too wide. He was basically on the chalk for most of it. But when you look at some of the data, it wasn't actually too bad compared to Aguero. So goal threat in that game. So Aguero had 6 shots, so did Sterling. All of Aguero's shots were in the box. Only 4 of Sterling's were in the box. But when you look at his creativity in that game, Sterling created 4 chances, 2 of which were big chances. And that's really the first time this season that we've seen Sterling really offer some creativity, because he'd largely been about goal threat until that game. So that's encouraging, because, we know that he was capable of that creativity from last season. We just hadn't seen it much yet. So then when you go on expected goal involvement, XGI, Sterling was actually ahead of Aguero for that game. Not by much, 1.10 XGI for that game, Aguero 1.05. So, I think the Brighton game was a blip. I think the Norwich game, yes, I take back what I said on Twitter. I think he was unfortunate because, of course, he hit the post and he had that occasion where he crossed the ball to the back post, and Otamendi probably should have scored, but it was a good save from Krul. So then the Watford game, I think, is the perfect opportunity for him to get back to what we were used to. And, of course, with me looking at my wildcard as a long-term thing, obviously, because I've got a long time until I get the next one, I still think that Sterling, between now and January, is going to play more minutes than Aguero, because the Champions League is just going to affect that. And he basically has Aguero. There's more competition for his place than there is for Sterling with his, because Jesus is around. Sterling can play the centre forward position as well, which obviously, of course, is another good thing for Sterling, because there's several positions within that 4-3-3 that Sterling can fulfil. Aguero really can only fulfil that centre forward position. And of course, the other thing, of course, was Sané being injured as well. Mahrez is really the only alternative on the wings. And of course, Bernardo Silva's not really, he's fantastic in any position you play him in, but of course he is kind of playing slightly out of position, because traditionally Pep has used him in the central midfield trio, so he's been pushed forward into that front slot. So really, Sterling is, when they're playing that 4-3-3 with Bernardo and Sterling is really the only kind of wide man he has available. So I still just think over that period that wild card is going to last me for, Sterling will play more minutes. And then if he is going to play more minutes, then it's kind of almost like a golden rule that we have in FPL. If you've got a choice between 2 similarly priced assets that both have strong potential to play for the same team, go with the guy is going to start more games. So that's why I'm just going to go with him. I know that sounds boring, and I know that Aguero is great. Of course, I captained in last game, but that's because I was confident in that individual moment he was going to play, and I was dead-ending my team. De Bruyne, I think I'm going to have as well. The fact that he was benched for the Norwich game makes me more confident that he's going to play next week. Of course, we have the Champions League to work with that as well. But
it sends such a message, doesn't it, to Guardiola? That's what happens when you bench De Bruyne.
Yes, when you bench De Bruyne, you lose to Norwich.
Yeah.
So it's not. You're right. It's a good point. He's not going to do that again anytime soon. So I think he's a strong one to have. And of course, do we really need to go over how great he is at creating chances? 16 chances created in the last 4 game weeks, and that's from only playing half an hour against Norwich. And top for big chances created last 4 game weeks, again, fewer minutes than everyone else around him. So, and I still maintain his price is criminal. It's daylight robbery. People are complaining about some of the prices being too expensive at the start of the season, but De Bruyne is so cheap for what he is going to deliver over that period. So I think Sterling and De Bruyne, that takes up 2 slots. Man City defence, I'm really not sure on, because while they're a team that don't ever really give up too many chances, they're one of these teams that you don't really need that many chances against to score. So, they conceded 8 big chances last 4 games, which is actually lower than kind of you'd probably want anyway. But I feel like there's this problem at Man City right now where they just keep conceding from set pieces, and I really don't get it, because Pep is such a methodical man who's so, he's so obsessed with the detail, and yet he seems to not be able to coach this team to defend set pieces, which I feel like that is what you would expect of a manager of A, his quality, and B, his attention to detail. Because we've seen it with Spurs, we've seen it with obviously Norwich at the weekend as well. So then it doesn't really, and we saw last season that they were one of these teams that the first chance, it was like the first shot on target they conceded, it went in. So their data that suggested they don't concede too many chances was almost misleading. So I went long periods of last season without a Man City defender because I just didn't trust them. And I feel like now I trust them even less. I was confident that Otamendi would be okay, because when they won the league 2017, that season, he was top of the league for passes completed. He was very assured on the ball.
And they kept 15 clean sheets.
Yeah, and kept plenty of clean sheets as well. But then against Norwich, it was, we all saw what happened with Pukki, but it wasn't just that. He was all over the place. So I don't really want a Man City defender, but I like that. That's good, because I was worried, what do I do with Zinchenko? But then that result, then Stone's getting injured as well. Who, I've never really rated as a defender. I think he's more of a ball-playing person. But the fact that there's serious problems at the back, I actually quite like, because it makes it easier to move away from the defence. So I think Sterling and De Bruyne are the two for me, and I'd probably just keep it at that.
I think it's an indication because I freshly wildcarded, and the only player I regret now is Otamendi, and I wish I'd gone a bit cheaper there, just to give myself, even if I had kept $1 million in the bank, just to use it for a rainy day or something. Because but anyway, Karam, you're a Man City fan, so you're looking at it from stats point of view, eye test, and also from the heart as well. So what's your take on Man City assets?
Well, I think that I should trust Man City defensively and offensively. To start with the defense, so I looked at the stats, unbiased. We play fantasy Premier League, so we should be very neutral when making decisions. So I looked at the stats, and here a disclaimer that I have a stat with and without Laporte, which is one data set, which is Gameweek 5. But if you look at Gameweek 1 to 4, where Laporte has played every minute until he got injured, they conceded 24 shots in total, which is the best in the league. 13 shots on target conceded, which was 4th best in the league, and the expected goals conceded for the XG lovers, 4.27, which is the 3rd best in the league. Now, without Laporte in week 5, they conceded 7 shots, was actually joint best with Watford. Shots on target conceded was 3, the 3rd best in the league, so more or less a similar rank with or without Laporte. However, the expected goal conceded, here it is, was 1.49, which is 12th in the league. Yeah. So basically, the number of chances that Man City concedes did not change much, but the quality of the chances are much higher.
Yeah. And that's largely what put me off last season. Like that is the data that completely backs up this idea.
Exactly.
It's the quality of the chances are too easy, and then they always go in. It's just so annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's largely because of the philosophy of Man City. They play like 45 meters away from the goalkeeper, and Norwich, full credit to them, they played very attacking football, which probably most of the other Premier League teams will not do the same. Plus a couple of individual mistakes, which I think personally that will not happen every game week, like the mistake of Otamendi. So for me, I still think that selling, if you are on a wild card, yes, I can understand why you don't want to own a Man City defender, but for me, it doesn't make much sense if I have 1 or 2 free transfers to make one of them to one of these transfers is a Man City defender who to sell, because it's a Watford at home, good fixtures to bounce back, and there is a potential for a clean sheet. Speaking about the offense, I still trust Sterling for the captaincy. Yeah. He's an excellent player, plays in an excellent team. They score the most goals in the league. I see a lot of goals in him in the upcoming game weeks. Over the last 2 seasons, that's 2 seasons data points, he managed 32 and 35 attacking returns, and I would be surprised if he managed less than that. He's just getting better, and the team is getting better. And I learned from Sterling specifically last season around Christmas time, where he was out of form when they got defeated from Newcastle and then Crystal Palace, and Eden Hazard was just on fire. And then on a New Year Eve, I switched Sterling to Hazard, and he never showed up. And Sterling racked up the points again. So playing around the premiums on a short term, swapping players doesn't work very often. So I learned just to stick with them. And if you are in a decision to make between Aguero and Sterling, that's much harder decision, because Aguero for me is more of a consistent player. You'll get the 6 to 7 to 8 points or sometimes hat-trick. But Sterling is more of explosive. He's the 20-21 points man. But then you have to take the rough with the smooth. So you have to take a couple of blanks on the way. So it depends really on how do you want to play. Do you want to play the more conservative than Aguero, the more explosive than Sterling, in my opinion? And in long term, I don't really see many points difference between both of them. So the golden rule here for me is just pick up one and stick with them for the rest of the season, or as long as you want. Now, the last question, that's something I'd like to touch from SD Soko about the template captaincy between Salah and Sterling over the last few weeks. I totally agree with him, because now if you look at game week 6 to game week 15, how many times you're going to captain Salah moving forward? Probably 1 or 2 game weeks, the Sheffield game in game week 7. But my eye, and that's really a key reason why I'm going to wildcard in game week 9, because I really want Aubameyang for Salah, because Aubameyang has very good fixtures until game week 16, and then you can make captaincy choices between Sterling and Aubameyang for much better fixtures. So I think, in my opinion, I see some change in the captaincy template. Let's put it this way, moving forward over the next 7 game weeks, because Aubameyang is captainable option in the next 5. In 5 of the next 7 game weeks. So he's really good pick, and he scares me. And he scared me game week 5. I didn't know how to afford him, and he holds. So he's capable of doing that. He's the only pick from Arsenal that I would go for if I have to. So that's why Aubameyang is a great pick. Son and Tottenham, he's a great pick. I really like him as a captain option more than Kane, given the situation where Kane drops back to midfield and he's more of a creative player. But that doesn't also exclude Kane from captaincy. So looking at the fixtures ahead, I like Aubameyang, Kane, Son, alongside with Sterling and Aguero more than Salah, for example. So that's why I think there will be a shift in the next few game weeks, especially after the international break.
Yeah, no, it's good thoughts there. And it's really interesting what both of you are saying about Sterling in particular. There, because a lot of people will lose faith early on in the Fantasy Premier League. It can be so easy to just hop on and off those premium defenders, and as Karam has said, it's so, something I've been preaching to, just stick with one and keep at it. And I've always come a cropper when I've moved between premiums, and I'm going to stick with Sterling until I can do it no more, and I'm nowhere near that stage. Yeah, let's move on to a talking point. How do you recover from a terrible start? David, what's all that about?
What that's all about is what most of us are feeling right now, which is a really tough start to the season. And we all look at our teams and think, it's not bad. You must have thought that, especially, Joe, as you've wildcarded and were satisfied with it. And then it underperformed. So a lot of us are feeling a bit down in the dumps, a bit kind of uninspired about FPL right now. So how do we recover from that? Pete Bezic has asked, he's asked this exact question. He's one of the best managers in FPL history. Obviously, we've done a Meet the Manager with him. Meet the Manager with him is a bit like if Ringo Starr was an FPL manager, because he sounds and looks almost exactly identical, which makes it doubly entertaining. To do watch it, but yeah, and plenty to learn as well. So even he's sort of asking this question. What do we like to do when we're in this situation? I suppose some of the answers, you wildcard, you have a bit of patience, you see how things go. Probably have some different approaches here. I'll start with you, Joe.
Okay.
I feel like I know what the answer might be because of your your profile picture on Twitter. But talk me through it when you're in these situations.
Well, my advice is to do absolutely nothing. And I draw on the advice of those like Simon March, who's won it and has appeared on the Scoutcast and Breakfast Club many times. FPL is a game, he says, that you play against yourself, and I think I agree with that. It's all the psychology that entails. So there's some basics in FPL that get forgotten when we've had a bad game week. So keep hits to a minimum. This is the basic stuff, really. Keep hits to a minimum. Look for a talisman. Pick nailed on players. Look for value. Make sure you have a good captain each week. These are stuff, bread and butter stuff for FPL managers. But the problem lies when we kind of deviate from that. So it doesn't mean you never make a transfer, but it just means don't make a quick knee-jerk response to something. Keep a clear head. Wait till midweek games. If Mason Mount is out for a while, for example, with Chelsea, he's a very popular player, so that could be a hit for some who've already made their moves. Getting Aubameyang in, I think, is a great tactic. It's funny that Karam mentioned him as well. I've actually highlighted in my notes that Aubameyang is actually the kind of player that if you want to rise up the rankings, get him. If you can get him. Because I can't say get him enough. But I don't think get him by any means possible. So get him with maybe a hit or for free over 2 weeks. So you're saving a transfer. Maybe two transfers are needed for free over 2 weeks. So, but getting him as part of a -8 or -12 or ditching Salah or Mane, these are types of things I don't think is a good tactic. But if you can get him some other way, do it. I've got a few top 10 finishes, so and I've two top 10K, I should say, finishes, not top 10. Never reach those dizzy heights. But I've had many worse ranks than I'm basically 600K at the moment, and I've been much worse than this at this stage of the season. So when I've risen up the rankings, it's because I've done all those basics the tried and tested basics. But when I've struggled I've had two top 50k seasons, was when I reacted to a hit gone wrong with more hits. And soon my team was full of differentials. And I remember one particular season where it started going, Patrick Van Arnholt, Andy Carroll, Olivier Giroud. I mean, God knows. I mean, my cat probably got in my team at some point that season. And lots of traps as well. Lots of traps. So if you want to make a move, the best players to get in, I think, go for a balanced team. So get Salah or Mane, Sterling or Aguero, KDB or Son. If you can get Aubameyang, somehow get him in. At least one good defender, so Alexander-Arnold, and use the gifts we've been given. So Lundstram, for example, Cantwell as well. Look at Norwich's fixtures. He's a 4.7. Now, David and I spoke on the Scoutcast a while ago, and he was saying he's a good fourth midfielder. I was saying he's a good fifth midfielder. We're both right. He's a good midfielder at the moment.
He's just good to have. It doesn't
matter.
Just
good to have. So it does lend itself, I think, at the moment to perhaps having a 5 midfield, or you can go a bit cheaper in midfield if you want to invest more up front. You need Aubameyang money. So look ahead to those fixtures. Great round for Aubameyang. Son as well. Game week 9 is a great one for Vardy. Firmino as well is ticking along, a nice differential, and he fits all those bills like he's nailed on, even though he was benched this week, but coming back from international duty. So for those that like expected stats, top for expected goals last 2 weeks among nailed on players, Abraham is top there, Rashford, Aguero. These aren't names of like under the radar people. These are just players you consider. Aubameyang, Mane, Cantwell is up there. He's in the top 6th best player for expected goals over the last 2 game weeks. Callum Wilson, everyone's dumped him. I dumped him game week 3, I think it was. Some dumped him this week, so hurts even more this week if you dumped him. But Callum Wilson is still there, and Bournemouth had those fixtures. Haller as well at West Ham. He is right up there in the top 10 for expected goals over the last 2 weeks. So these are just some of the names that I think we should mention. So yeah, they're my thoughts on trying to climb the rankings, hopefully.
I'm going to pretend to be shocked that you suggested do nothing and look at numbers, but it's tried and tested, so I totally understand it. And to be honest, I think we're probably going to get a similar answer from Karam, because obviously you had a really tough game week this game week, and yet you are still preaching wildcard game week 8 or 9. So you look like a man who's prepared to stick to a plan as well.
Yeah, this game week was really hard to take. I was at 120k before game week 5, and then I ended up in 725k. So that's about 600k drop in one game week. So the simple answer for me, it's easy to say but hard to really do, is just don't worry too much. I think that if one game week let me drop that much, I think one good game week can still recover me from that, because we are still 5 game weeks in the season. And I'm at 725k, but actually when I looked at the range of different ranks, I'm only 26 away to reach the top 100k, 47 to top 10k, and 53 to top 5k. So we are still squeezed. So this rank doesn't really look horrible. Look at more how many points you average per game week. If you are around the 60 or 58 or 57, you are still in good shape. And that's where I am at the moment. So a bit of more consistency we will do for me. And sometimes just leave everything, close the page, close the account, don't do nothing, come back midweek with a fresh mind. Because if you are still stressed, and I can't really understand why the disappointment for many of the FPL managers, because of the amount of time they put in research, because of the expectations they put on certain player. So you can understand the frustration, but at the very end of the day, it's a game. It's not a FIFA game where you have 100% control on everything. You can make a switch halftime and then you can change things around. You do your own research, you do your best, you take calculated, educated decisions, and then you never know what comes up from a player. Maybe a team like Man City had a bad day at the office. Who would have thought that they will lose by 3 goals to Norwich, for example? Or doesn't win the game. So these kind of situations, you cannot fully control it, and that should help you a bit. That okay, you did your best. Like you said, Joe, just stay calm and stay calm and take more calculated risks. Because if you are still stressed and made rage transfers or very rushed decisions, you will just do more mistakes, and then your season will get even worse. So I'm not too worried much at this stage of the season. I still think I still have a plan, and I'm really believing in this plan. I believe that game week 9 is a good time for me to wildcard, for example, getting Aubameyang. I've never been spoken too much on social media. He's still owned by 20% or a bit more. I don't know where they are from, but he is a good captain and good captain for many game weeks. He plays for a team that have good fixtures. So I still think, and at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. I just think that this is a good plan. I'm gonna try it, and after 5 game weeks, I will see what happens. If it worked out, then yes, I had a successful plan. If I didn't, then I learn, and there is always a next game week or a next season to learn from. And you, Joe, and David have very long history of seasons in FPL, so you just keep learning, I guess, and everyone does. So that's my thought on it.
I think, if nothing else, I know we struggled to really come up with a convincing plan on defenders. I mean, I did. People were saying in the comments, the answer is we don't know. But I think, if nothing else, people have learned from watching this episode that, yeah, don't panic. I think that's the key, isn't it? And a few people in the comments were talking about, at this stage of the season, you are going to see huge swings in rank because, as you mentioned there, we're also tightly compressed. And I like that you've been able to work out that, Karam, that you are still really not that far off a position you'd like to be in at the end of the season. So just keep an eye on that, and hopefully we'll have most of the people who watch the Scoutcast will be the kind of people that aren't going to make these raise transfers and bring in Mason Mount before he gets injured in the Champions League. I mean, that's just stick to the plan. That's the way to go. Yeah. So there we are, Joe. Let's hand back to you and see what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk about differentials and clean sheets. So here we look at the best options over the next 4 weeks. In the case of clean sheets, we're going to look for 6 weeks. Today it's Karam's turn, and as usual, we have no idea who his selection is. We've had Robinson, Cantwell, Pukki, Haller and Tarkowski so far, so thankfully Neil picked the Burnley defender to take the pressure off. Karam, who is your differential pick?
So I thought I'm gonna pick a defender, so Diamond only cut Diamond, so just to at least compete with Neil. But my thought ended up in Socrates, so I'm not gonna go for that.
Oh yeah, please.
So my pick was on someone. He just passed the 5% this afternoon, so I cannot pick him. But I'm gonna go for Nicolas Pippi of Arsenal. Yeah, we were talking about Aubameyang, but Lacazette is out for a few weeks, so I think Pippi will start most of the games. He's a very good player. He still adapting to the new team. Good fixtures. I think his ownership is about 2.4%, so he's still very nice differential. The only problem with him, his price bracket. He's competing with Son, he's competing with KDB, which I think he loses for now. So if you really fancy a really differential pick, then Pepe with the upcoming fixtures could be a decent one. I know we did not see much from him, but that's why we picked some differentials until 5%, down or below 5%. So Pepe for me, and I hope he delivers something over the next 4 game weeks.
Yeah, he's an interesting pick for me. As you said, it's not really him, it's his price. And I had the similar issue with Tarkowski last week as well, when I thought Eric Peters could get more. Pepe is a slight unknown quantity at the moment, so there's that element of risk. Will he be able to score and assist and get all those lovely FPL points? I'm not quite sure yet, but you have to spend 9.4, so that probably means you don't get KDB or Son, who we know can deliver. And so that's what he's competing against, really. So I don't have anything problem against him, although I just feel that he's got to compete with just better options, so it's going to be tricky. Yeah. But nevertheless, if someone fancies a structure whereby they can fit 2 9.4 midfielders into their team, yes, he is a good option. But I think and for the managers who cannot afford Aubameyang at 11 million, and they are planning to go heavy in midfield anyway for like 3-5-2 or 4-5-1, then you can squeeze Pepe and De Bruyne, but probably you cannot afford Sterling and Salah at the same time.
that would be too much in midfield, but at least you can put two 9.5 midfielders together if you plan to cover Arsenal. I know if you want Aubameyang, you have to get Aubameyang. You don't get a cover for Aubameyang, but that doesn't mean that Pippi would not return anything. I think the last game week he played up front with Aubameyang in a diamond where Ozil played behind him, so he has a chance to be more central while Lacazette is still out. So. Yeah, here you go.
He's a good differential pick for this, though, because we have a track record of successes, all of them so far. All of them within 4 weeks have delivered. Tarkowski, I'm sure he's going to get at least a clean sheet over the next 3 game weeks. David, what do you think about Pepe, or is it rather the price, not the man?
Yeah, I mean, the price in this situation is not right, and is annoying. It makes sense for him because, I mean, what he did last season in Ligue 1 was very similar to what Salah did in his final season for the Premier League. He came in at 9 million, so I totally understand why he is that price. But yeah, I'm probably not going to get him, but I would love to have him because I think I've actually been sort of tipping him since before he'd even played any Premier League minutes because I did the scout report on him over the summer. I was really impressed. I mean, mostly myself and Neil, when we did those scout reports over the summer, we were really negative about pretty much everyone who signed. There was most of the people who signed for the clubs from European clubs or Championship clubs. Very few of them particularly offered much in terms of the way of underlying statistics from the previous season that suggested they could carry forward their form into the Premier League. But Pepe was a different story because he averaged a better minute per shot than Aubameyang last season in Ligue 1. And I know obviously it's not quite the same quality of league, but he was hugely ahead of Aubameyang for minutes per chance created because he has the potential to be what Salah is to Liverpool in this pacey, wide player, capable of playing somewhere through the middle, who can offer goals and assists because that's what he did last season in France. And I think, 22 goals, 11 assists, and there was only one other player who had more than 20 goals and more than 10 assists in the whole season, and that was Messi. So he was in a pretty incredible price bracket. So as long as, I mean, he's taken a bit of time to find his feet, so I don't want him just yet. But because he's a midfielder and he's cheaper than Aubameyang, and if he can really find his feet, get a nice run of form going, I can't see any reason why by the end of the season he's not the top scoring Arsenal player because he if he can do goals and assists, whereas I think Aubameyang is really just about the goals, and of course he gets the extra point for those goals, and on the odd occasion they get a clean sheet and get that as well. He has the potential to offer serious value, but we just kind of need to see him settle down before I say that's definitely going to happen. But I think there's a strong chance of it. So yeah, I really like Pepe.
I have another note. So I was looking for something, and I actually found him in the imminent table. So he's due a goal, 13 goal attempts, one big chance, but did not score yet. So he's due. Glad he was there.
He's due, and if he's passing the eye test, especially for Arsenal fans as well, then and the stats say he's due a goal as well.
Last game which you had a huge success in the imminent table. Everyone on the table got a goal.
I know.
Right.
I've slightly tweaked it by looking at expected stats a bit this season, just to see how that goes. But I think it should be good. It should be good. Let's move on to clean sheets. David, we've got a table we'll put up on the screen as well. But you just want to take us through that? Who are the teams to look out for next 6 in terms of clean sheets?
Yep. So that team that we all think defensively are amazing, top of the season ticker, Man City, yay! They've got some great fixtures actually. So it's probably something we probably should have mentioned. Karam sort of touched on it, didn't he? If you're in a situation where you're not wildcarding and you've got a Man City defender and you've got other fire stuff out, why not leave them in? Just give them this home game against Watford because, Watford and Flores, I believe, weren't particularly forthcoming in terms of goals, and of course they're missing Dini, so every reason they can keep a clean sheet there. Everton away, Everton struggling in front of goal as well. Moise Keane hasn't really done what he's supposed to. He hasn't really put any pressure on Calvert-Lewin, and Calvert-Lewin scored recently, but they're not really scoring too many goals. Wolves again, not scoring too many goals. Palace, Villa, Southampton, incredible fixtures there. So that's the counter argument, I suppose, to those of us who are going to ditch. Burnley, we already talked about earlier on, but just to go through their fixtures again: Norwich at home, Villa away, Everton at home, Leicester away, Chelsea at home, Sheffield United away. So really nice kind of rotating looking fixtures there, because you probably wouldn't want to start too many Burnley defensive assets away at Norwich. You probably would, at home to Norwich, probably would away to Villa, Everton, Chelsea, you're going to bench them. Sheffield United, you're not. So, if you're looking at rotations, Burnley should definitely be in there. Arsenal, I have always said I'd stay away from their defenders, but there's one or two fixtures in here that I quite like. The final three of that selection, probably better than the first three. Villa at home, Man United away, Bournemouth at home. Kind of tough, but Sheffield United away, Palace at home, Wolves at home. Nice looking fixtures there. Norwich, you see, it's frustrating with these ones, isn't it, Joe? Because so many teams in this list whose defenses suck, but they've got nice fixtures. Burnley away, Palace away, Villa at home, Bournemouth away, Man United at home, Brighton away for Norwich. So some nice ones in there. Chelsea, after they've hosted Liverpool, they get to host Brighton, then go to Southampton, then they host Newcastle, then they go away to Burnley and are away at Watford as well. So some nice looking ones there too. And as I mentioned, got my eye on West Ham because after they've had to host Man United and go away to Bournemouth, they get to host Palace, go to Everton, host Sheffield United, and host Newcastle. So some nice ones in there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say about Burnley and rotation. Now, I've got on my wildcard a rotation going on with Pope and Henderson. I actually might play Henderson over Pope this week because I don't fancy their chances about the Pookie machine of goals. But I think have a look at they're looking at game week 10. I believe Sheffield United are a great team to play then. So, and that also applies to Lundstram and Loughton or Peters or Tarkowski, whichever Burnley defender takes your fancy there. I will say about Arsenal as well, their fullbacks are always slightly interesting, but only slightly. But I do concede that they do concede. So there's no need for me to consider them in terms of clean sheets. But it goes back to that Alexander-Arnold, Luca Dean point there as well. Karam has obviously touched on many of those players that we're looking at there. Let's move on to what we're going to be doing in game week 6. Karam, let's have a look at your team. What are you planning for game week 6?
So, Deulofeu is benched again against Man City. Probably I'm doing the same mistake. I'm not quite sure. We'll see. So I've made one transfer. So I thought we spoke about being patient, doing nothing, but being 6.3 million game week rank, it's really hard to take. So I wanted to do any transfer, and I made the most impressive transfer on air. So Dundunker was due a drop, Cantwell was due a rise. So I made that transfer. Just to say, okay, Karam, you did the transfer. Now calm down. Now I think Cantwell. I think Cantwell is a great pick. I like the Norwich fixtures. Previously in Breakfast Club we spoke about is Pookie gonna be the new Jimenez or Mitrovic? For me, he became the Callum Wilson. He's a troll. I got him. He blanked against West Ham. I benched him. He hauled. So he's there. Never bench Pookie again. Cantwell is joining him as well. So that's one transfer. The second transfer is honestly up in the air. One option is to roll. I like game week 7 for a couple of players, including Son, maybe captain as well. And game week 7, Man City away to Everton. Liverpool away to Sheffield, so I fancy Son as a captain. It might require a hit to do that in 3 transfers. So Van Dijk is also someone I'm looking at to sell. Maybe I will keep him for this game week. Not too sure really. Maybe I will play Deulofeu. So there are many options I have. Miguel, 1 assist in 3 game weeks. I thought now not enough, but he's doing the shots from range still. 2 shots on target yesterday. So he's sort of like saying, okay, keep me for Arsenal. I like the picture against Arsenal all of a sudden. So he might still in. The other option, which I'm considering this game week, is making 2 more transfers, taking out Van Dijk to Rico for 4.0, and getting rid of Deulofeu for Vardy. Now, I like, this is exact money I have now. So I hope no prices will change over the next 2 nights. But I like Vardy fixture against Tottenham. He has 4 goals in the last 3 appearances against Spurs. I like his fixture against Newcastle. And then it will be around the time to wildcard. So the next 2 or 3 transfers for me will be just making sure to pick up nailed-on players, good players that can climb me the ranking before I make a big surgery in my team around the game week 9. So that's mainly a captain. All the way Sterling. I like the fixture against Watford. I think they will score goals. It's at Etihad. I see 3-4 goals at Man City. versus Watford. So Sterling for me, bar any injuries midweek. KDB is the vice captain. Should Sterling be benched? And yeah, that's the team. I'm keeping faith in Zinchenko for one more week, although Mendy joined the squad for the Champions League game against Donetsk. So maybe he can survive one more week. We will see. But that's mainly it for now.
Yeah, no, good moves, but I would say that because I like the patience in terms of captaining Sterling, that faith there as well. I can't argue with getting Cantwell in as a fifth midfielder. It's the formation, it screams five-man midfielder at the moment. For Mount owners, if he's looking like he's absent for this weekend and beyond, many weeks beyond, well, then we have a ready-made cheap replacement there. So I'm sure many people who don't have Cantwell will be looking at him as well. I'm just going to quickly mention my team before we go into David's wildcard. My team is exactly the same as it was before. Well, not exactly the same, but in terms of I'm not making a transfer. I'm going to continue captaining Sterling. So looking at patience there. Lundstram is on my bench at the moment. I am going to play Cantwell instead of him. I think Cantwell is just play him now is fine. Mount, if it mounts out, which it looks like very likely he is, depending on the length of time he's out for, I may make a transfer there. James at Manchester United was another player I had my eye on, and I think other people will as well. So I will look at that. I've just been looking down the list actually of replacements. Cantwell is the next best scorer to Mount in that below 7 million, 6.5 million territory. Lamella is an intriguing one, and we'll come to David's bus team in a minute. Buendia at Norwich. I don't dare go triple Norwich attack, but do I? Tielemans at Leicester is another 21 points so far. Lanzini is just too expensive for me, but I think Lanzini would be the one. If I could afford it, I would go for him, and then perhaps move Haller on to Abraham further down the line, or go for that double up. But Lanzini is a player I like. McNeil is an intriguing one. I think he's about 0.5 overpriced for a Burnley midfielder, but McNeil is a tempter. David, let's have a look at your bus team at the moment. Now, you mentioned, I'm just going to quickly go through who you've got.
Joe, no.
No, I won't.
Yeah.
Because basically what you've done is you've constructed a team which is looking at price rises and stuff. So if you can go through who genuinely will probably be in your wildcard team come Friday, sorry, we got a Friday deadline.
Yeah, another one of those. Yeah, no, sorry. The main reason is just reading out as a list. You're gonna hear some embarrassing names in here because I got Yannick Vestergaard, who I have absolutely zero intention of keeping because I don't trust Southampton's defence. And why is he still priced at 5 million? I don't really understand that. It's just madness. But he was, I think he's like is he top point scorer for defenders? It's really weird.
Yes,
that's happened.
He's number 18th overall as well amongst all the game. That's why he's 5.0. The official FPL knew it before.
Maybe.
In the old days, when they used to have the man in the stand doing bonus, and he had some favourites. Maybe the man in the stand is back behind the scenes at FPL Towers, and he's he's called something like, don't know, Dave Vestergaard or something, and it's his cousin. Who knows?
Maybe. I have no intention of owning him, but he was one of the players who was looking like he would hold his value because I can't remember who I had in that fifth slot. It was just a defender I was worried was going to go down in price, so I figured I'd just go on someone who'd just risen, so they were nice and protected. So he's not staying, no way. Lamella is another one who I've considered. I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with Lamella. He's got 2 goals, 2 assists so far this season, so it's not bad. And in a decent price bracket, perhaps maybe could be someone people turn to in the absence of Mount. We'll see. But again, I might get him. I'm not sure. The main reason he was there was for the value. I haven't decided. Well, no, I have now. This morning, I hadn't decided if I wanted Abraham or Mount. Now I know the answer. I want Abraham because Mount is injured. But I got them both because they were looking like they were both going to go up. So getting them both on the wild card for now, they did go up in price. It just gave me that flexibility to choose one without having to pay the extra. I haven't decided if I want to get rid of Salah and get Mane, but Mane was going to go up, and Mane did go up, and Salah hasn't changed in price. So now, if I do want to keep Mane, I can keep him for a bit cheaper. So I basically I did this wild card at sort of like 2:00, 3:00 on Saturday before some of the games had even finished, because I just wanted to the best way to if you are going to soak up a bit of value, it doesn't necessarily always help you make profit, but it just help you save 0.1 perhaps on some players you end up eventually going with. Callum Wilson is another one actually who I think he could go up. So I thought, getting him at 7.8 is great, bearing in mind I sold him for 8. And then, of course, he did incredible. So potential saving of 0.2 there. I mean, really, there's so many big decisions I've got to make. And, I want to try and be as helpful as I possibly can for people who are turning to us for advice. But with the midweek games coming, Man City playing on Wednesday night, I can't really make any final decisions on my premiums yet, because if Sterling gets injured, and Jesus gets injured, then I've got a bigger problem to decide between Sterling and Aguero. Things like that. I'm really not sure yet. I mean, general loose terms, I'm sure of. I mean, Pukki and Cantwell are going to stay. I'm almost certainly going to have Abraham now. If I'm wildcarding, I'm not afraid of getting in before the Liverpool game, because the fixtures afterwards are amazing, and he's in fantastic form. And also, I don't really trust Liverpool's defence too much so far this season. I can see there being lots of goals even in that game, as I talked about in the captain video. So, he's probably going to stay. There will be either Salah or Mane. It depends what I can do with the 1 million. I really need to play with it a little bit more. I actually think that Wilson may stay, because I think, he
like him.
Yeah, he's ticked along really nicely and is approaching fixtures that are really good, having posted form in all of his fixtures so far that's worth having. And, some people perhaps maybe were thinking, well, you sold him, a couple of weeks ago. Do you not feel it's a bit of a backward move? Well, I still look back to last season, which obviously was successful for me, in my opinion. I had a lot of occasions where I moved someone on, and then I kind of looked at them and thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that or whatever. So Jimenez was one. So I had I think game week 3 or 4, and then I sold him on my wild card, I think. And then I just got him straight back after he did well again. And even there, I was losing some money in doing that. It paid off because it was just the right thing to do. And as you mentioned before, you play this game against yourself, so never be prepared, or never always be prepared to sort of go back on yourself if you feel it's the right thing to do. And I think that getting back in on Wilson could be good. And the fact that even though I didn't get the points, I at the very least have made 0.2 million profit on selling him and then buying him back for 7.8. Part of that makes me feel warm and fuzzy as someone who likes to make a bit of a saving. So lots up in the air, as I said. A lot of it depends on the midweek games. You probably get a better idea of what my team's going to look like on Friday. So apologies for that. It's a sponge rather than for value rather than a set team at this point.
I like the principle of it. As someone who likes price points, I like the fact that you've gone for basically price points and looking for value at the moment, and then can move on. So, for example, with Mount there as well. So if you've got Callum Wilson, Lanzini is possibly a Mount replacement for that role there. Yeah. If you're not going to have Haller. Also with Callum Wilson, I like him at 7.8 because if you decide you want Haller or you want Jimenez, if Wolves can finally start performing in the Premier League as they did last season, then you can make that move really easily as well. Yeah. Cantwell is a gift at the moment, as Lundstram is, in terms of you can play essentially your cheap fifth midfielder. You can just play him every week. And then Lundstram is there, and they're playing Everton this weekend. It's one of those matches. I don't know. It's hard to call. Could be 0-0. It's just good backups.
If looking at the Norwich fixtures, I don't really think that we can bench Cantwell in any of the next 4. So you can, if you are going for 3 forwards, then it's easy to say that Cantwell can be a 4th midfielder, which means. Yeah. If you downgrade Vestergaard to someone like 4.0, 4.5,
when I get rid of Vestergaard,
when, yeah, exactly. That's the best description. And you downgrade Mount, you will actually be close to fund the like of Aubameyang instead of Callum Wilson if you decide to end up. So
I actually have 1.3 in the bank as well. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So if you consider Cantwell as a 4th midfielder, you can easily fund Aubameyang by a couple of more transfers. So I really like him. That's why I got him. Yes, he's now my 5th midfielder, but I need him long term. So when I wildcard, he will probably consider for me as a 4th midfielder because of his value is incredible. His fixtures is nice. So I like him, and I want to play him week in, week out.
I think by the time you wildcard, he could be 5.3 or something, which actually, to be honest, at the start of the season, I think we all would have said that's ideally what you'd like your fourth midfielder to be, like your Fraser at last season or McGinn or something like that. So you're absolutely right. I think he is now playing like a fourth midfielder. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's just been pointed out in the chat as well. Lundstram used to be an Everton player. So we all know what happens when players
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
revisit their old team. They feel they have a point to prove.
Incoming.
Here we
Everybody
go,
calm down.
Lundstram hat-trick.
Fine.
No, but I'd like to part of your wildcard team. Now, we said at the beginning of the show about my own wildcard and many other people's wildcards. Didn't work out this week. We'll see in coming weeks. But there is one wildcard I did like the look of, and that's Anorak's, who does a lot of the suspension data for Fantasy Football Scout and been a popular figure amongst the FPL community for a number of years. He had a sort of 3-4-3, and he didn't have Salah, but he had Mane instead. And I actually quite like the look of his team because his front three involved Abraham and Pukki, and Mane had it. And because he didn't have a Man City defender and he just went cheap with Rico, I think it was Rico or a 4 million defender there, and I kind of like that. So I think if could turn back the clock, I'd copy Anorak's wildcard team at the moment because it was for last week, but I still think it's a good one for going forward. And we spoke about Mane and Salah. I think I've dipped into Mane instead of Salah before last season. It was fine. So I think, decisions coming up for you. No Aguero though, David. So you will.
Not at the moment. No.
You're running the gauntlet of having Aguero in your game week 5 side, and then going into game week 6 at home to Watford without him. And but
I don't mind that. It will inevitably annoy me if he outscores Sterling. But I still just, if I've got to look at it as between now and Christmas, and I just feel that Sterling will play more than Aguero. So I think I'll have to just. I don't know. We'll see. We will see. A lot of it depends on what happens in the Champions League and what Pep says on Friday.
And he's so involved. He's so involved in everything. He goals, assists, so he'll come good.
Karam, what do you think of David's wildcard team? I know some of the personnel are a bit different, but the basic structure.
Yeah, let's not talk about Vestergaard.
The basic structure.
For now, he's holding on a Man City defense, so that's a good start, David. No, I like the wild card really. Cantwell is a great value. He should stay there. Depends on what's the situation with Mount of his injury. I like the front three. Now I used to play 2 up front. Never been successful in a 6.5 figure. I had Chris Wood while Ashley Barnes racked up the points, but now you have the flexibility to go to 7 or 8 million brackets. So Abraham, Callum Wilson. So 3-4-3, 4-4-2, 4-3-3 if that would be really great option. Mane versus Salah. It's tough. It's tough call here. I don't see a big difference
on that subject alone, to be honest.
If the 1 million would make a big difference for you, then yes, why not? I mean, they will switch probably the game weeks where someone will outscore the another, so they will even out probably by the end of the season.
Karam, you've just given me a thought, and it's in a way, David, you've kept a similar formation as last time because of Cantwell there, and thinking you have to play, if you've got that 3 up front, that good bunch of strikers there, you have to ditch a midfielder. You can't play all of those strikers and midfielders, so you have to ditch one. Logic and Price said it'd be Cantwell, but then you look at those fixtures and you go, I can't Cantwell on my bench this week, your bench, 6 points. There we go. So that's what happens when you leave them on the bench, and that's a really nice return for 4.7. So I probably want to see, as it pains me, someone like Den Donker in his side. But I think the Donker would work.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm really not afraid of a double pivot. So that would be 2 4 million defenders. Of course, one of them would be Lundstram, and two midfielders who are Cantwell and Den Donker. I wouldn't be afraid of that, because I think it just unlocks the ability to do a few other things, and it's really flexible as well. Because on any given week, if I have to, I'm happy to start Den Donker. I'm always happy to start Cantwell. I was very stupid for not doing that this week, and I think the same for Lundstram. Not so much whoever the other the 5th defender is, but because I think Lundstrom's a 4th defender. If we're classifying these players,
But have you decided to get rid of KDB because he's not in your draft?
No. So that was just because that was to avoid. This team is, as I said, is purely just based on I want to make sure that when I get to Friday, I have the most amount of money to play with as possible. So, for example, Zinchenko's still there because he's gone up to 5-6. And if I sell him and then bring him back, then of course it's going to cost me an extra 0.1, things like that. De Bruyne, he's 9.8. He was benched. I was just worried that if I brought him in and enough people were annoyed about that he might go down. And he certainly wasn't going to go up because he blanked. So De Bruyne will probably feature in there at some point, and it completely changes things around. Although, of course, I have that extra money to play with. I think that's the thing. It's just a sponge right now. It's not a team. It's just soaking up value.
I think I was just going to say, going back to Anorak's team, I think he can have a look at his team. go and find him on Twitter and look at his team, because I think he found a way of getting a really good midfield and defence and 3 attack as well. So, and I think that's what you're looking. I'm not saying exactly copy what he's doing, but certainly it's a good indication, because it's the first wildcard side. As it pains me that doesn't include my own, but it's the first wildcard side I've looked at and thought, wow, that's quite good actually. So But anyway, Karam, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, last note on NKDB. I think the reason that Guardiola benched him is because of the amount of minutes he played for Belgium. He played like 165 minutes, and he just came back from injury last season, and he really wants to protect him. I really think that he will start the majority of the matches in September and October, and that's why he just sacrificed benching him this game week, hoping that he will just make the win, but it didn't work out for him. So I think, barring any injuries midweek, KDB should start all the matches, the upcoming matches. So fingers crossed.
Okay, yeah, so big choice there for David. KDB or not to KDB, and hopefully find a way through it.
KDB.
Yes, choose KDB. Just before we go, I just want to mention the members area on Fantasy Football Scout. All of those tables and so a lot of the stats we've been talking about, the expected stats and your traditional stats like shots in the box and at close range and all those types of things. They're all in the members area. Lots of exclusive articles as well throughout the season. I do urge people to have a look in there. I think the comparison tool might be getting some airing this week for those who've got Mount, to compare who are the best alternatives there if he is indeed out for a while. As I said, that injury has happened whilst we've been recording. But for now, it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye for me.
Goodbye all.